But the team that's got me really excited right now is the Minnesota Twins in the AL Central. They're ahead of the Kansas City Royals right now. Royce Lewis is hitting a home run just about every other game, doing it at an insane pace. And we love our Central teams here on Who's Better Baseball. It seems like I didn't know that we were going to love them, but we do. And Minnesota's been fantastic. They've been a great story. It's a beautiful ballpark up there at Target Field. And in a year in which there's so many teams on the coast getting coverage with big time players and superstars that they've acquired in the offseason. Minnesota has done it really quietly, especially with one of the more underrated pitchers in the game in Pablo Lopez, who they've extended through at least the 2027 season. So for me, the Minnesota Twins are very much a club right now. I believe they're second in the AL wildcard rankings right now. That I really think is going to be, aggressive going into that July 30th trade deadline, and really is going to make a move for the AL Central to have at least two postseason teams this October.
It's crazy to look at the standings and say they've passed up the Royals. And the Royals got swept over the weekend against the Rangers, but you look at this Twins team, and because of those early season injuries, I think a lot of us started to write them off a little bit. Now, like you mentioned, Royce Lewis is back. Carlos Correa is having a great season so far this year. He's been very solid. And I look at the F4 leaders on the team, and you count them up. There are 8 guys who have been worth at least 1 win so far this year. And you have Edouard Julien, who's at 0.9. So if you almost have an entire starting lineup of guys that have been just net positives, that's going to bode really well for you. It's a team that we don't really know how aggressive they will choose to be. We don't know how aggressive any of these teams in the Central will choose to be. But as much as we think that the Guardians are kind of the head and shoulders best team in this division, the Twins were supposed to be the favorite coming in, and they're starting to play like it.
They really are. They're getting contributions from everybody, as you pointed out, and they're not a young team anymore, right? They've got those veteran guys. They've got plenty of players that are close to 30, and despite the fact that Carlos Correa, as you pointed out, playing really well, but Correa, Byron Buxton, and Pablo Lopez signed together through at least the 2027 season. Those are 3 of their cornerstone pieces, but there's a lot more that are going to be free agents. Max Kepler is going to be free agent at the end of this year. They've got about $50 million coming off the books in general, if you look at their projected payroll for 2025. So I think it's going to allow them to be a little bit more aggressive and say, well, you know what, we've got a group that's gonna stay together for a while, but you know what, we're losing some critical pieces here too. So we might need to go out and add. And I think the pitching staff is that spot where they're going to look to make certain additions because they're doing it really well on offense, as you pointed out. And they're 7-3 in their last 10, and they're just trending in the right direction. And I think they're going to go out and do some things because they're paying some big bucks to a guy like Carlos Correa. Same thing with Buxton, who you don't know if he's going to be healthy next year. You have those opportunities in the upcoming seasons, but if he's not healthy, that's a big piece that you're going to be missing. Well, that piece is in play right now. You might as well go after it. Maybe even go after the AL Central in general too, because that's no guarantee, as we know, in the American League. So whether it's the AL Central or just locking up one of these postseasons in the American League and trying to make a run in October, I think the Twins are going to be aggressive this summer.
They have so many variables that just are so erratic when you look at Buxton, Correa, and Lewis, but just sheer talent. That trio, you get that trio healthy in any postseason series, and they can make some things happen. You're right. The pitching is a big thing that has to be addressed. And I think part of this period right now is, if you're the manager, if you're in that clubhouse, you're talking about you have to show yourself to this front office that this is a team that is worth buying into, because pitching is not going to come cheap at this deadline. Everyone needs pitching at this time of year. You look at this rotation, you have Pablo Lopez, like you mentioned, whose underlying stats are far better than his 5.11 ERA.
So he's going to get better. That's a positive for you, is that your
Yes.
ace has not been good. 5.11 ERA.
But yeah, but then you look at the expected ERA of 3.25. Yes, you're going to get more from him. You've gotten great stuff from Joe Ryan. His expected stuff sort of lines up to it. 92 innings, 15 starts, 3.13 ERA. Simeon Woods Richardson has been great for them. A young starter starting to establish himself. He's got a 3.26. You look at Bailey Ober. I think he just had a Greg Maggs the other day where he pitched, was a complete game shutout or something with 89 pitches. So I don't know if you're bumping him. Chris Paddock is a guy that they hoped a lot. They hope they get a lot of him. Hasn't really been there. So they have, 5 names right now, but getting another guy to put next to Pablo Lopez and Joe Ryan atop that rotation would go a long way. I just don't know who that guy is at this year's deadline.
And I think if you can get that number 5 starting pitcher who really you're ultimately going to want him to slide in at like the number 2-3 spot as far as abilities go, Chris Paddock in a bullpen, like
Yeah.
that really could move the needle in such a big way. And again, I appreciate you giving some shine to a guy like Simeon Woods Richardson, former Mets prospect. So I know you're kind of quietly rooting for him in a way, or rooting against him. No, you've proven to be the kind of guy where you want players to do well, regardless if it does not bode well for your team in the Mets. So Minnesota is really an exciting team, and as long as Royce Lewis can stay healthy, as long as Byron Buxton can stay healthy, I'm not worried about Pablo Lopez. As you said, he's kind of been unlucky in many ways. He's going to be fine. I think Joe Ryan is legitimate. This is a team. Yohan Duran in the bullpen, one of the best closers in the game. You're talking about a team that could really make an impact during the postseason, and you really got to fortify that spot to separate yourself in the second half from those other AL clubs and really secure one of the wild card spots. So again, Minnesota to be aggressive here this summer.
Yeah, I think if you compare them to the Royals right now, the Royals have a clear need to address their bullpen, and we'll see if they do that. But I think there might be a sense of urgency that's even though the Royals added and were aggressive and are said to be still in that mode of really trying to win now. It's easier for them, I think, to sit on their hands a little bit and say, if they don't perform over the final month here, to say, we'll just sort of ride with what we have. We have good pitching. We have good talent. Whereas the Twins, I feel like there's more of a clock on this window. And so I agree with you that the Twins are a more interesting team to follow out of that center right now. And the Guardians are just far and away ahead.